Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu and with me is Saira Mushtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and his Egyptian counterpart hold bilateral talks in Cairo. India and Egypt sign MOU to bolster defence cooperation. India has the capacity to meet food requirements of large part of the world, says country's Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar. Indian Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh reaches New York en route to Washington on first leg of 5-day visit to United States. High-level week of 77th session of United Nations General Assembly begins in New York. Global polarization, Russia-Ukraine conflict, food and energy crisis high on agenda. In Japan, authorities warn of floods and landslides in wake of Typhoon Nanmadol. And Asia-Pacific Institute of Broadcasting Development unanimously extends India's presidency for one more year. India and Egypt have agreed to identify proposals for expanding cooperation between the defence industries of the two countries in a time-bound manner. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held bilateral talks with his Egyptian counterpart General Mohammad Zaki in Cairo yesterday. Both sides discussed steps to strengthen defence ties and reached a consensus to enhance conduct of joint exercises and exchange of personnel for training, especially in the field of counter-insurgency. The two ministers also exchanged views on regional security and acknowledged the contribution of India and Egypt to peace and stability in the world. Following Mr. Singh's call on with President of Egypt, Mr. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, both leaders agreed to consolidate and focus on enhancing security and defense aspects of bilateral cooperation. They also signed a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the field of defense to pave the way for enhancing defense cooperation across all sectors of mutual interest. In a tweet, Mr. Singh said, the signing of the MOU adds new impetus and synergy to the India-Egypt relations. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you AAR News Special India-Egypt Ties. In conversation are strategic analyst Atul Aneja and journalist Sanjay Jha.
As two of the world's most ancient civilizations, India and Egypt have enjoyed close contacts for many centuries. And now Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is on a 3-day visit which has started on Sunday to further extend defence cooperation between two countries. He is carrying proposals that could see the revival of Egypt-India jet technology cooperation. Mr. Aneja, you have been watching Middle East and you know these countries very well. What significance do you attach to Defence Minister's visit of Egypt?
Sanjayji, I think it's a very important visit. Important, why? Because I see in this a revival of the India-Egypt relations to a new level altogether. As you are well aware that India and Egypt had a very special relationship which goes back to the late 50s and 60s. And then it was with Gamal Abdel Nasser, the leader of Egypt, and then the leadership of the time, which Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi. And then, of course, because of geopolitical reasons, in the collapse of the Soviet Union, when we were no longer in a Cold War context and the non-aligned movement really declined, there was a lull in a way in the relationship between India and Egypt. But I think it's coming full circle now. The manner in which and the kind of meetings, the scope and the agenda of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's meetings in Egypt, it reminds me of an attempt to revive, to put it another way, to rekindle the old romance. And so this does not seem to be just a visit of continuity of bilateral relationship. But I think there is something much more fundamental. It's being looked at in a much bigger scale, with Egypt being a regional power in the region, in the Middle East, and India, again, one of the major economies of the world. I think in this new context, both India and Egypt are looking at each other differently and with far more aspiration and ambition than before. And therefore, as I said, I think it is the revival of a relationship to a very high level.
Indeed, it is a revival. Egypt is a key actor in the new network of alliances across West Asia, tying together India and Israel with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. The coalition is critical to India's energy security needs as well as its long-term security interest in West Asia. So, as you have rightly pointed out, this visit should not be seen only as a visit of defense minister, but it's a revival of India-Egypt cooperation on different fronts. So how will this alliance, Egypt's position in West Asia, will help us in reaching out for our energy needs, for our security interest in West Asia?
Well, in a number of ways. First thing, Sanjayji, you have to realize the strategic importance of Egypt. It's a country which controls the Suez Canal, which is a main artery for trade between the rest of the world and Europe. And therefore, it acquires a special significance, a good relationship with Egypt. Second thing is, if you recall, there was once a very thriving defense relationship between India and Egypt. And when the Egyptians also bought Soviet origin weaponry, and we also had similar equipment. So at that time, when many Indian pilots actually went to train the Egyptian Air Force. And now you find, and we've still not got confirmation of it, whether it was raised during Raksha Mantri's visit, where the Egyptians have evinced interest buying the Tejas aircraft. And that is something, it is one of the countries which has shown interest in that. So I would not be surprised if we have Tejas on the radar now in terms of adding altogether new dimension among the two air forces. Now that is a big possibility which is likely. Second thing, you have to watch that the Egyptians are very interested in new energy projects. So there's a hydrogen production project where the Egyptians are interested in the Sinai area. And this was raised not in this visit, but separately, parallelly, there are talks going on between External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar in New York with the Egyptians where this issue was raised. So I think that is coming, the new energy is coming into another dimension in the tie-ups between India and Egypt. Just a small, I would like to recall, when I visited Egypt to interview former President Mohamed Morsi, now he had told me very clearly, he said, look, we are very interested in the BRICS and we want BRICS to become E-BRICS, E for Egypt, that Egypt was very inclined to join the BRICS grouping of emerging economies. And he also said that in the Sinai area, we want to make that into a major IT hub. And we would want Indian expertise in the software sector as well as in laying the fiber optic cables, because Sinai was seen as one area, the desert area, as the area where this new industries will come. So new economy, Sanjayji, is becoming a new area of connection between India and Egypt. Third thing is geopolitically, as you mentioned, you see, we are entering into a multipolar era where once again there are going to be multiple power centers in the world. Israel will be one, but Egypt will also be one. And Egypt and Israel no longer are antagonistic with each other. And then you have the Middle East area, Iran will be one. And then you have Saudi Arabia and GCC as another. India will be one, China will be one, Russia will be one, and the US will be one. So when power has got diffused, Egypt has the potential of being a middle-level power. And therefore, it is important that countries like India bond with Egyptians, and Egyptians have an advantage of bonding with India, which not only has a potential of a regional power, but frankly, and then into a global power. So I think it's a convergence of interest in multiple spheres between India and Egypt. And I would suspect that the visit of the Raksha Mantri is only one major, it's a pioneering step, but we are likely to see more in terms of even higher level visits. This could be setting the ground for possible summit at some point between India and Egypt.
Absolutely. You touched upon the defense cooperation. Prime Minister Modi has been, giving major trust about defense equipment manufacturing in India. Egypt has become now the world's third largest arms importers, from 2016 to 2020 after Saudi and India, And India has a very tiny 0.2% share of the global arms export market. So with this new trust of the defense manufacturing, I think, we could probably compete and we can exceed the global share of defense export from countries like Brazil, Czech, and South Africa. And now Egypt, because it's a very big importer, it could provide an opportunity for the defense industrial complex. And you rightly touched upon that they are very keen on Tejas light combat aircraft. Like Indian Air Force, Egypt also operates the Rafale, but needs a smaller and less complex fighter to provide bulk to its force and a stepping stone for its pilots. And I think that's where we can provide them this opportunity. We can set up probably a production line in Egypt if the deal goes through. And they're also interested in India-made missiles, as well as advanced light helicopter and light combat helicopter. So there's a huge opportunity for the defense export in Egypt. You think Egypt could be one of the country where we can look forward for exporting our defense equipment?
Really, I think very much so. And I completely agree with you that our relationship with Egypt in some way dovetails or docks with the Atmanirbhar Bharat doctrine of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where we want to manufacture in India for the world. And among the items which are to be manufactured, military hardware is one of the major items, first areas which are coming into play. And for the first time, we have exportable hardware. Like you mentioned, the Tejas has come in, the light combat helicopter has come in, number of missile systems have come in, air defense systems have come in. And frankly, I think really the middle powers or the emerging economies are the real market for Indian hardware. See, this is one market which is being captured big time by the Chinese. I think India can give a run for the money to the Chinese. You see the Tejas, for example, outdoes the JS-17 program of the Chinese and the Pakistanis. This is the assessment, not of a partisan Indian, but a general assessment in the Air Force community, world over. And similarly, there are other weapon systems which India can provide, which we have already listed. And now in the emerging economies, Egypt is one, Brazil is one. Closer home, Malaysia is becoming another one. They have also evinced interest in Tejas. So you find these new market opportunities coming up, which can give a big fillip to the Indian defense studies, defense hardware, defense equipment. Along with that, we want the bigger countries to manufacture in India. Like the French, we would want them to manufacture Rafale in India, and in India then exporting it to the world. So I think this visit to Egypt is central to the Atmanirbhar Bharat doctrine as applied to military. And this is one of the major markets which we see. And this visit which is happening is actually breaking this new ground as we speak. And we would now need to follow up, probably in the Defense Expo, we would want the Egyptians to come in, as well as others like the Brazilians or the Argentinians to come in and fully exploit the possibility of exports of Indian military hardware to friendly countries.
Yeah, we have also seen India and Egypt trade exchange, growing exponentially by 75% in 2021-22, and it has reached to 7.26 billion. So if we have this new addition of defense export, I think this trade volume will go up quite a lot. So what are the other stuff which we are trading with each other in terms of like India exporting or India importing from Egypt? What are the traditional trade route between two countries?
One of the major things which was traded, export, was our agriculture products, especially wheat was going in from India to that. Tea was a very, very major export. I remember I joined a Indian tea delegation to Cairo a few years ago. The whole idea was to put tea as part of, like we had the fair price shops or the ration shops which sell it at low prices. The Egyptians also had that kind of a concept based on their socialist era. We were interested to introduce all types of teas into Egypt so that it has a captive market of tea. So that is one. I think one very major thing is cultural exchanges, which we need to do. Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations of the world, as is India. So I think when it comes to cultural exchanges, tourism is a very major area. Of course, Egypt is a tourism powerhouse because of the pyramids and their pharaonic history. But so is India aspiring to be one. So I think there is a complementarity here in terms of adding new areas like tourism into the basket of exchanges between India and Egypt.
Mr. Neja, thank you so much for your time and analyzing the Defense Minister's visit to Egypt and its impact on both relations between two countries.
Thank you so much, Sanjay ji. Real pleasure talking.
In some more news, Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that the future of finance in India is going to be driven more and more by the digitization of banking and related services. Ms. Sitharaman said this while addressing the third edition of KEEDS program on the theme Future of Finance organized by FICCI in New Delhi. She mentioned that the global average of fintech adoption is 64%, while it is 87% in India.
I already spoke about how India has shown the way in our people adapting technology. Even on that, the data is so explicit. While the global average for fintech adoption is about 64%, India's number is 87%. So absolutely across the board, adopting technology is done by all our people. So the progress in terms of digital is only going to be even further accentuated.
Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh reached New York on Tuesday evening en route to Washington on the first leg of his 5-day U.S. visit. During the tour, he will participate in the Global Clean Energy Action Forum, scheduled from the 21st to the 23rd of September at Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. The minister was received by senior Indian embassy officials at the JFK airport. After this, he left for Washington, D.C. to hold an important roundtable with senior executives of about 35 companies and federal representatives associated with geospatial, space, earth, and ocean science, pharma, and biotech sectors. The roundtable is being organized by U.S.-India Business Council at U.S. Chambers of Commerce headquarters in Washington, D.C.
India's Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan will pay an official visit to tiny African nation of Djibouti from tomorrow. During his 2-day visit, the minister will call on the Prime Minister of Djibouti, Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, and will hold talks with Foreign Minister Mahmoud Ali Yusuf on the issues of mutual interest. He will also interact with the Indian community in Djibouti. British High Commissioner to India Alex Ellis on Tuesday said India and the United Kingdom have the high ambition of completing the Free Trade Agreement FTA by Diwali this year, which will increase employment and bring economic development to India over the next 25 years. The UK High Commissioner was speaking to media on the sidelines of an event in New Delhi. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Welcome back. Indian Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar has said that the country has the capacity to meet the food requirements of a large part of the world as India is moving fast to become a world leader in the agriculture sector. Mr. Tomar virtually addressed the Leeds 2022 conference organized by Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry FICCI in New Delhi on Tuesday. The Indian Agriculture Ministry said India has emerged as the second largest food producer in the world and its agricultural exports crossed the 4 lakh crore rupees mark. High-level week of 77th session of UN General Assembly began in New York. Global polarization, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, food and energy crisis, economic problems and natural disasters are likely to dominate the agenda. A watershed moment, transformative solutions to interlocking challenges is the theme of this year's meeting. Speaking at the opening of the General Assembly's annual top-level meeting, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres told world leaders on Tuesday that nations are gridlocked in colossal global dysfunction and aren't ready or willing to tackle the major challenges that threaten the future of humanity and the fate of the planet. About 150 heads of government or state are attending the meet, formerly known as the General Debate of the Assembly, which is held amid high security. Prime Minister Modi is not attending the meeting this year, and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar is scheduled to speak for India on Saturday.
As world leaders are meeting at the 77th UN General Assembly on Tuesday to take decisive action to end the spiraling global hunger crisis, over 200 civil society organizations from 75 countries have signed an open letter expressing outrage at skyrocketing hunger levels and recommendations for immediate action. We have a report.
In a statement, the organization said that a staggering 345 million people are now experiencing acute hunger, a number that has more than doubled since 2019. The civil society organization said despite promises from world leaders to never allow famine again in the 21st century, famine is once more imminent in Somalia. Around the world, 50 million people are on the brink of starvation in 45 countries, pointing out that as many as 19,700 people are estimated to be dying of hunger every day. They said that this translates to one person dying of hunger every 4 seconds. They said that this is not about one country or one continent, and hunger never only has one cause. This is about the injustice of the whole of humanity. Anuja Kumar for World News.
In Japan, Typhoon Nanmadol killed at least 4 people and injured more than 100 others after one of the biggest storms in recent decades made landfall on the southern island of Kyushu on Sunday morning. Rescue workers have warned of mudslides and flooding. By Tuesday, 140,000 homes were still without electricity. The storm has now been downgraded to a cyclone after moving across much of the country and heading out to sea. At least 114 people have been injured, 14 of them seriously. The super typhoon destroyed homes and disrupting transport and businesses.
India's presidency of the prestigious Asia Pacific Institute of Broadcasting Development has been extended for 1 more year. This was unanimously decided by the AIBD member countries at the 2-day General Conference held in New Delhi. Currently, Chief Executive Officer of Prasar Bharati and Director General of Doordarshan, Mayank Kumar Agarwal, is the President of AIBD. The Asia Pacific Institute for Broadcasting Development, or AIBD, was established in 1977. Over the past 75 years since independence, India's largest public service broadcaster, All India Radio, has been the proverbial storyteller for crores of people across the country. AIR is celebrating 75 years of freedom with the series Azad Bharat Ki Baat, Akashvani Ke Saath. The series showcases the journey of India since independence in various walks of life through the storytelling of All India Radio. In Tuesday's episode, we will bring you the story of Civil Aviation Ministry's Regional Connectivity Scheme, UDAN, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik.
Civil Aviation Ministry had launched its Regional Connectivity Scheme UDAN, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, on 27th of April 2017. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said this scheme aims to fulfill the aspirations of the common citizen by following the vision of Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik with an enhanced aviation infrastructure and air connectivity in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities.
हवाई यात्रा के लिए, एविएशन फील्ड के लिए विश्व में सबसे ज्यादा अवसर कहीं है तो भारत में। बहुत पहले हमारी सोच ये बनी थी कि हवाई यात्रा ने ये राजा महाराजाओं का ही विषय है। इतना बड़ा देश है, इतनी संभावनाएं हैं, विश्व का ध्यान है, एक एविएशन पॉलिसी बनाएं, कसौटी पर कसें, सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स को उसमें विश्वास में ले और नीति के आधार पर इसके एक्सपांशन की एक डिजाइन तैयार करें। मुझे खुशी है कि आजादी के बाद पहली बार देश में एविएशन पॉलिसी बनाने का सौभाग्य हमारी सरकार को मिला। एविएशन को मैं किस रूप में देखता हूँ? गरीब व्यक्ति की एक पहचान है, वो हवाई चप्पल पहनता है कि मैं चाहता हूँ कि हवाई जहाज में हवाई चप्पल वाले लोग दिखाई दे, और आज ये संभव हो रहा है।
The scheme was designed to jumpstart the regional aviation market, improving viability of regional air connectivity by making flying affordable for the common populace. UDAN 2 focuses on hilly areas in northeastern and island states. UDAN 3 focuses on seaplanes operations to develop water aerodromes. UDAN 4 focuses on shorter routes to facilitate the development of regional hubs. In the last 5 years, UDAN has significantly increased the regional air connectivity in the country. There were 74 operational airports in 2014. Because of the UDAN scheme, this number has increased to 141 by now. 68 underserved or unserved destinations have been connected under UDAN scheme, with 400 225 new routes initiated under the scheme, Udan has provided air connectivity to more than 29 states and union territories across the length and breadth of the country. More than 1 crore passengers have availed the benefits of this scheme as on 4th of August 2022. The scheme has also provided a much-needed platform to regional carriers to scale up their operations. Udan has played a great role in transformation of Indian aviation industry. This scheme has benefited a diverse set of stakeholders. Passengers have got the benefits of air connectivity. Airlines have received concessions for operating regional routes. Unserved regions have received the direct and indirect benefits of air connectivity for their economic development. Lifeline Udan initiative commenced in March 2020 during COVID-19 period, and it helped to operate 588 flights transporting almost 1,000 tons of cargo and essential medical services to various parts of the country. Krishi Udan scheme was launched in August 2020 on international and national routes to assist farmers in transporting agricultural products so that it improves their value realization.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has warned that Washington's pro-Taiwan approach might have a disruptive impact on US-China ties, with a rare mention of invoking China's anti-secession law to seek reunification with Taiwan in an escalation of rhetoric over the self-ruled island. Mr. Wang said this during a meeting with former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger on Monday. His statement comes in the backdrop of US President Joe Biden's latest assertion of defending Taiwan in case of a Chinese invasion of the island and the Taiwan Policy Act of 2022, clearing a US Senate panel last week allocating up to $6.5 billion in military aid to Taiwan. In Myanmar, 12 people including 6 children were killed in an army helicopter attack on a school and a village. According to local media, 17 other people were also injured when army helicopters shot at a school in north-central Myanmar. In a statement, the military said that it opened fire because rebels were using the building to attack its forces.
The International Cricket Council (ICC) on Tuesday announced several changes to its playing conditions after the Chief Executive's Committee ratified recommendations from the Sourav Ganguly-led men's cricket team. Some of these new rules would be having historic effect on the game of cricket itself. The main changes to the playing conditions will come into effect on the 1st of October this year. According to the new rules, Mankar would no longer be considered as an unfair play, but it would be called and run out. The saliva ban that was implemented for the past 2 years due to COVID-19 would now be permanent, and players would not be allowed to use saliva to make the ball shine. In cricket, Australia defeated India by 4 wickets in the first T20 International of the 3-match series in Mohali. Chasing a victory target of 209 runs set by India, Australia overhauled the target with a loss of 6 wickets and 4 balls to spare. Earlier, put into bat, India posted 208 for 6 in the stipulated 20 overs. KL Rahul made 55 runs while Suryakumar Yadav contributed 46.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post reports that epic queue for Queen Elizabeth II's coffin had 250,000 people. The Guardian writes that Tigrayan force accused Eritrea of launching full-scale offensive on border. The Financial Times writes that Sweden's interest rate rise is biggest in 3 decades. The Wall Street Journal writes that Russia moves to annex occupied lands as Ukraine presses offensive. A quick look at the headlines once again. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and his Egyptian counterpart hold bilateral talks in Cairo. India and Egypt sign MOU to bolster defence cooperation. India has the capacity to meet food requirements of large part of the world, says country's Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar. Indian Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh reaches New York en route to Washington on first leg of 5-day visit to United States. High-level week of 77th session of United Nations General Assembly begins in New York. Global polarization, Russia-Ukraine conflict, food and energy crisis high on agenda. In Japan, authorities warn of floods and landslides in wake of Typhoon Nanmadol. Asia Pacific Institute of Broadcasting Development unanimously extends India's presidency for 1 more year, and in cricket, Australia beat India by 4 wickets in first T20 of 3-match series at Mohali. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Armenia. back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.